From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Afternoon Edition.
Profound sadness that we bid farewell to my dear friend, colleague, an outright champion for the state of California, Senator Dianne Feinstein.
San Francisco, the Bay Area, California, and the nation mourning the loss of Senator Dianne Feinstein, who has died at the age of 90.
She's a legend.
Just phenomenal.
She was a path breaker.
An amazing woman who did so much for San Francisco and California and the United States.
I'm Ann Makovic. We're going to have complete coverage on the death of Senator Dianne Feinstein, her impact on the Bay Area and the nation, and what comes next for her Senate seat. But first, let's quickly get to some of your other top stories this afternoon in San Francisco. Officials have identified the utility worker killed in that trench collapse yesterday. 25-year-old Javier Romero was working on a sewer project at Oak and Divisadero when the collapse buried him under 8 feet of dirt and debris. In Las Vegas, a new arrest for the 1996 drive-by shooting that killed rapper Tupac Shakur. 60-year-old Dwayne Kefidi Davis has been charged with murder. He is not the accused gunman, but prosecutors say he orchestrated the mysterious shooting on the Vegas Strip 27 years ago. And the San Francisco Giants have just fired manager Gabe Kapler. The team made that official announcement within the past hour. The Giants have made the postseason just once over the last 4 years. And let's get a check on your forecast now with the chance of rain on the horizon for this weekend. Here's First Alert meteorologist Jessica Birch.
Now, it's been a dry week, but heading into our weekend forecast, we have a light splash of showers moving its way in from offshore. Some gusty afternoons ahead of us, and to be honest, it's not a lot of rain that we're going to be seeing, but it happens in the early morning hours tomorrow, so you will be waking up to the nice smell of rain right around the corner, and then we dry up into the afternoons. If you're heading out to the Golden Gate Park for hardly strictly bluegrass, expect 60s all weekend long, so it's not a bad idea to at least bring some layers. And heading into Sunday, beautiful conditions for everyone heading down to Levi's Stadium, 60s turning into 70s, and the Castro Street Fair is happening too this weekend. We're expecting 60s for that. Now, heading into our daytime highs today for our Friday trend, 70s throughout the North Bay. I mean, it's a mild setup for us today from Novato all the way up into Santa Rosa, heading all the way down to the Golden Gate Bridge. Now 60s this afternoon in San Francisco. It's been a mild start to the morning and a beautiful way to finish the day today with 70s from San Jose all the way up into our East Bay too.
Back now to our top story, the death of Senator Dianne Feinstein. People have been laying flowers outside of her home in San Francisco. Her impact on the city, state, and country was immense as a trailblazing pioneer for women in politics. Erica Brown joining us live now from our nation's capital. Erica, it's not like this was a total shocker. Of course, Dianne Feinstein was 90 years old, but she seemed larger than life. What is that doing to the mood in Capitol Hill today?
Well, and this still has a somber tone here in Washington. We saw those images of Dianne Feinstein's chair draped in black on the Senate floor. We heard from leadership, including Republicans like Senator Mitch McConnell, who calls her a true friend. We learned of flowers being dropped off at her office here on the Capitol. And so also on the House side, we heard from Nancy Pelosi, who called her a pillar of public service for California, and Representative Ro Khanna, who lauded her efforts to fight for climate change, particularly issues related to wildfires and droughts, very important to the state of California, as well as gun reform and LGBTQ rights. And so there is a somber tone. We see this sort of coming together of Republicans and Democrats who agree that Dianne Feinstein was a trailblazer, a pioneer opening the door for many women coming behind her.
Earlier this morning, we lost a giant in the Senate.
The Senate held a moment of silence for Dianne Feinstein, her desk draped in black, as colleagues from both sides of the aisle paid tribute to the California Democrat.
We look at that desk, and we know what we have lost. But we also give thanks. Thanks to someone so rarefied, so brave, so graceful a presence.
Dianne was a trailblazer in her beloved home state of California, and our entire nation are better for her dogged advocacy and diligent service.
The morning before her death, Feinstein was still at work.
Mrs. Feinstein.
She voted. She voted to make sure that our country would continue to move forward and not shut down. That was Dianne. She did her job every day.
Senator Feinstein had announced her retirement at the end of this term, but now it will be up to California's governor to appoint a temporary replacement before the election next November.
Questions.
They will be big shoes to fill. The legendary fighter served in the Senate longer than any woman in American history.
She was a historic figure, trailblazer for women, and a great friend.
And over in the House,
Let us just pray that she rests in peace.
lawmakers locked in a battle to avoid a government shutdown stopped for a moment of silence.
Her career was, by any standards, historic.
Feinstein died at her home here in Washington, where flags are at half-staff in salute to a political pioneer.
And now the attention shifts to California Governor Newsom, who is expected to announce a temporary appointment for Senator Dianne Feinstein's seat. We know that Democrats hold a very slim majority in the Senate. He has said in the past that he would consider appointing a woman of color. Ann?
All right, well, we will certainly keep our eyes on that. It's just interesting, everybody remembering her as a politician, but really also a friend. Erica Brown, live for us in the nation's capital. San Francisco City Hall, the state capitol, and the U.S. Capitol, all lowering their flags to half-staff in honor of Senator Feinstein. This is just the start of a number of remembrances planned over the next few days. Of course, Feinstein's political career goes back almost 5 decades. She was president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors back in 1979 when Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk were assassinated by former Supervisor Dan White. And after suddenly becoming mayor, Feinstein was widely credited with calming nerves across the city after those shootings. Before she was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1992, another former San Francisco Mayor, Willie Brown, highlighting the wide range of causes and important moments in which she was integral.
Dianne could actually be equated with the Pentagon paper discovery on what she did to the CIA. Most people don't even reference that. They go back to her successful effort to produce an assault weapon ban, or they go back to her confrontation on several issues, and in particular involving what occurred on the floor of the Senate when she went there for Anita Hill, and Biden was the chair of the Judiciary Committee. It's amazing how many things in history Dianne was a part of.
It is amazing. Governor Gavin Newsom releasing a statement saying in part, Dianne Feinstein was many things, a powerful trailblazing U.S. senator, an early voice for gun control, a leader in times of tragedy and chaos. But to me, she was a dear friend, a lifelong mentor, and a role model not only for me, but to my wife and daughters for what a powerful, effective leader looks like. We also heard today from State Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco, who says Feinstein also made her mark during the AIDS crisis, becoming a strong voice and ally for the city's gay community.
She explicitly and directly campaigned for gay votes. She campaigned in the community. That was, I think for a straight politician, may have been the first time. And she was there in the 60s campaigning, asking for gay votes. As mayor, when HIV was decimating our community and there was literally a mass die-off of gay men, she was willing, on the advice of public health experts and community leaders, to step up and just deeply invest resources in San Francisco's response to this health crisis at a time when the federal government was missing in action, and to the point where San Francisco was spending more in HIV response than the entire federal government.
Our Juliette Goodrich is in Washington, D.C. for us right now. She's getting more reaction to Senator Feinstein's passing.
I'm Juliette Goodrich in Washington, D.C., inside the Capitol building, where today flags are flying half-staff for Senator Dianne Feinstein. Many people reacting and talking about her storied career. She was a trailblazer. Dianne Feinstein's political career started in San Francisco in 1969 when she was elected to the city's Board of Supervisors. She would ultimately become the first woman to serve as the board's president. And the most fitting tribute right now, Senator Boxer saying that Senator Feinstein never viewed her post in the Senate as a job. She viewed it as a mission. Senator Feinstein was the longest serving female senator in history, and she has a huge part in Bay Area politics in California. So we'll be live here at 5 o'clock and also 6 and 7 o'clock this evening, and we'll be bringing you live reports and reaction on her death. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Juliet. Looking forward to those reports. In fact, our entire news team is covering the legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein because it's a big one. Those reports coming up again at 5 o'clock. And in the meantime, to get more perspective on the late senator's accomplishments throughout her long career, we are joined live now by political strategist Carolyn Heldman. Thanks for being here today. And we know you've been giving feedback throughout the day. What have been some of the highlights of your coverage so far, your memories, your thoughts, your on this legacy?
Well, I will say as a Cub legislative assistant in Congress, I was on the House side. I had the privilege of accidentally being on the Senate subway with Dianne Feinstein, with Senator Feinstein, and I was in a bit of awe, but she reached out. She could probably see that I was nervous. Reached out, asked about where I worked, praised my member, Jolene Unsold, and then talked about whether or not I ever wanted to run for public office. This is what she did. She didn't just open doors for girls and women as a trailblazer. She also made sure that those doors stayed open behind her. This is someone I personally respect a great deal. My respect for her was elevated even further when she went a bit against the Democratic Party to hold the CIA accountable for its torture techniques in Guantanamo Bay. So all around, a really courageous public servant.
Of course, another part of her legacy we've been talking about is the assault weapons ban. Of course, that is now over. But what impact did that make when it comes to regulating gun control?
When I talk about gun control now and common sense gun control measures, I always refer back to data that we gathered when the assault weapons ban was in place for 10 years. I was on the Hill when she passed that. It was her grit that got it through, and she was very much inspired by being first on the scene with Harvey Milk and George Moscone in that horrific shooting, murder by homophobe Dan White, former member of that political team. She really pushes legislation forward, and we know that it worked, and it's such a shame, right, that we've gotten away from that. But I will say, if we could look back on that and the learnings from the assault weapons ban, I think that would be a great foundation for common sense gun reform moving forward.
Carolyn Heldman, thank you for your insights on that. And of course, our coverage of the death of Dianne Feinstein is going to continue after the break. We're going to take a look at what Governor Gavin Newsom is doing about her Senate seat and what this means for next year's Senate race. We're also going to take a look back at her impact on San Francisco from her time as a city supervisor to mayor in the wake of the Harvey Milk assassination that Caroline just referred to, and how she helps shape the city that we know today.
Do you envision any problems as being a young woman president of the Board of Supervisors?
No, I think it's going to be very enjoyable. And I think the people of San Francisco will enjoy having a woman presiding. I think I'll be able to work efficiently and effectively with the board. They've all given me their support, and I think you're going to find that it's going to be a very interesting and very productive 2 years.
We are continuing our coverage of the death of Dianne Feinstein. San Francisco City Hall lowered its flags to half staff today in honor of the late senator, former mayor, and city supervisor. Mayor London Breed remembering her decades of service to the city.
She led with courage. She worked hard for the city. She was a beacon of hope and inspiration during a very dark and tragic time, which cemented her legacy as an extraordinary leader for our city and for our country.
And there are some very tangible reminders of Feinstein's impact directly on the life of San Franciscans, from her work to save the city's iconic cable cars to her role in making Pier 39 a reality as it celebrates its 45th anniversary this weekend. And of course, Fleet Week started back in 1981 when she was mayor. One of the biggest and most tragic moments in Feinstein's career was when she was serving as the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. 1978, the assassinations of Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk propelled her into the national spotlight.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Her poise at that moment was just incredible. She was widely credited with calming nerves across the city after the shootings. To talk more about Feinstein's legacy as a leader in San Francisco specifically, we're joined by former Mayor Frank Jordan. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about your memories of Dianne. You were mayor after her, but she had laid the groundwork for a lot of changes around City Hall.
Well, yes, she did, but first of all, my condolences go out to Kathleen, her daughter, and their grandchildren. This is a shock to all of us, even though we know she was not doing well. She was failing in health, but we did not see it end coming this quickly. And it does not surprise me that she remained a public servant right up to the very last day of her life, even making a vote in the Senate the day before she actually died that evening. But to me, I saw her as a modern day gladiator in many ways, because she started off in a man's world where there were not many women in politics, and she became the first mayor, as you know, and then the first senator in the state of California. But in doing so, she had to really fight hard, battle in so many ways that were difficult to overcome, but she did it, and she did it in style, and she did it in grace, and she more than held her own. To me, I thought that she was a very dynamic, action-oriented person. And I remember one time we went to a hostage negotiation situation when I was police chief, and she showed up in a jumpsuit, and she kind of called me off to the side, and she says, "You know, Frank, I love the action so much. I think I'd rather be chief of police than mayor." And I do firmly believe that, because she did the very same thing with the fire department. She'd show up in a jumpsuit at 4 alarm fires. She was action-oriented all the time. Another area I would think would be of interest is that every Monday morning, she would have all of her 57 department heads into the mayor's office, including me as chief of police. And her whole idea was to coordinate and cooperate with interagency activities that particular week. And for me, it was what's going on in the criminal justice area. As you know, she was very strong on law and order, public safety. That was a very key issue in her total administration, and always was, all the way up to the Senate. And that way she would stay on top of issues, and she'd make sure the rest of us were doing our job properly. I think that we are missing politicians like her today, who are moderates in the middle, who could work with the left and the right and find some consensus of approach that we're not seeing today in this modern world.
Well, yes, she's been widely credited for being able to reach across the aisle, and I was kind of wondering what that means in San Francisco, because there isn't much of an aisle. But that's kind of what you're talking about how she grouped together all the department heads and made sure everybody was on the same page.
Exactly right, and she would be very determined. What are your plans for this coming week, and do the other agencies know it in case that you should be cooperating? Sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing unless you bring them all together and talk about the upcoming issues of the week. She was very good at that. I learned it from her, and I did the very same when I became mayor, to bring those department heads in, because that was something that was beneficial to her, and it certainly was beneficial to me. But the big winner was the city of San Francisco.
All right, Frank Jordan, thank you so much for your unique perspective there, working under her as police chief and then taking the reins as mayor after her tenure. We appreciate it. Coming up after this break, we're going to take a look at what is next for Senator Dianne Feinstein's seat in the Senate.
This is Pix Plus. More local news in the morning and the only 8 and 9 p.m. news. Groundbreaking original storytelling and weather like you've never seen. The primetime edition. Weeknights on the new Pix Plus. 44 Cable 12.
While the nation looks back and honors the life of Senator Dianne Feinstein, a lot of people in D.C. and in Sacramento are looking ahead to who will eventually fill her seat. 3 lawmakers already threw their hat into the race for her seat prior to her death. Congressman Adam Schiff, Congresswoman Katie Porter, and East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee. But it's going to be up to Governor Newsom to fill that seat until next year's election. Now, he's earlier said that he wants that person to be a caretaker until voters decide on the long-term replacement. So he's already said he's not going to pick any of those 3 candidates to be interim senator so as not to give anybody an unfair advantage. He also had originally promised to appoint a Black woman to the seat, but he has since walked that back. So we will continue to follow that part of this story. And coming up next, we're going to let you know about some of the public remembrances for the late senator around San Francisco.
Do you envision any problems as being a young woman president of the Board of Supervisors?
No, I think it's going to be very enjoyable. And I think the people of San Francisco will enjoy having a woman presiding. I think I'll be able to work efficiently and effectively with the board. They've all given me their support, and I think you're going to find that it's going to be a very interesting and very productive 2 years.
And before we go, we wanted to just check back in with the ongoing remembrances of Dianne Feinstein happening here in the Bay Area and across the country. Right now in San Francisco, there is a condolence book. It's on the 4th floor of City Hall. Anybody can come up and sign and leave your remembrance for the late senator and former city mayor. That is going to be open until 4 o'clock this afternoon. I've heard it's a little bit of a zoo there, so there's still time to get down there today if you want, but it will be up there for the next several days. And in Washington, flags have been lowered at both the White House and Capitol building as remembrances there are just getting underway. And we're going to have much more coming up on CBS News Bay Area, the evening edition beginning tonight at 5 o'clock. Our Juliette Goodrich is in Washington, D.C. right now. She's talking with lawmakers and friends for a little bit more insight onto the legacy of Senator Dianne Feinstein. And you can see more of our extensive coverage of her life and legacy, as well as looking ahead to what is going to happen with her Senate seat. That is in a special section on our website, kpix.com. CBS Evening News coming up next.